never talked to him before, so how's the number on your phone?
National Security Advisor Mike Waltz appeared on Fox News in an attempt to explain how he inadvertently included the Atlantic editor Jeffrey Goldberg to a Signal group chat discussing U.S. war plans.
I'm not an expert. Never talked to him before, so how's the number on your phone?
National Security Advisor Mike Waltz appeared on Fox News in an attempt to explain how he inadvertently included the Atlantic editor Jeffrey Goldberg to a Signal group chat discussing U.S. war plans.
I'm not an expert in any of this, but it's just curious. How's the number on your phone?
Well, if you have somebody else's contact and then somehow it gets sucked in, it gets sucked in.
Was there someone else supposed to be on the chat that wasn't on the chat that you thought was
so
on?
the person that I thought was on there was never on there. It was this
Who was that?
Well, I'm not. Look, okay. Laura, I take responsibility. I built the.
Despite saying he takes, quote, full responsibility, Waltz continued to disparage the Atlantic and Goldberg's journalistic integrity.
You know, Laura, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but of all the people out there, somehow this guy who has lied about the president, gone to just all kinds of lengths to lie and smear the president of the United States, and he's the one that somehow gets on somebody's contact and then gets sucked into this group.
Goldberg appeared on MSNBC to respond to Waltz's claims.
The simple truth of the matter is, on March 11th, Mike Waltz sent me a message request on Signal, and I accepted it. That's the entire story.
The Atlantic has published what it described as additional messages from the group chat, saying, quote, people should see the text in order to reach their own conclusions.
We're following breaking news on the Trump administration's massive security blunder. The Republican chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee is now confirming he'll work with Democrats to move forward on an investigation. Roger Wicker says he's sending a letter to the White House on all of this. Now, that's where CNN's Jeff Zeleny is now. So, Jeff, what are you hearing from the White House and from whether Donald Trump was okay with this testimony that we heard from his nation's top security officials about that controversial group chat?
Well, Manu, that certainly is interesting because Senator Wicker, as you well know, when you talk to him frequently, has been one of the few Republican voices of criticism, particularly when it comes to matters of defense and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. But as for the president, he appeared on a morning radio show this morning, and he said there was nothing that was released that was classified, nothing that was compromised. But he also sounds like he's alarmed by actually how this came about. Also not exactly sure what signal may be.
Somebody in my group either screwed up or it's a bad signal. You know, it's a bad signal, happens to. But it seems to be maybe came in with a staffer, and it was by accident, from what we can tell. We'll know pretty much today, I think. But we have some pretty good guys checking out the phones. But it's something that is not a big deal, other than you want to find out who did it and how they did it. Because you don't want to happen, in the future. You can have that happen.
So it's seemingly talking like a different kind of signal, like a telephone signal, of course. This is a messaging app, but never mind all that. The bottom line here is the White House and the president are pushing back against all of this criticism. Of course, they're taking a familiar a page out of the Trump playbook and blaming the Messenger and the Atlantic. But behind all of that, there are still many questions here about how Jeffrey Goldberg got added onto this group conversation anyway. The National Security Advisor Mike Walls was on Fox last night. He did not answer all those questions at all. So those questions, of course, will be front and center at the White House press briefing, which is coming up in the next hour. So as of now, the White House is standing by all of their advisors, even as these questions remain. But one advisor told me the president does not like being lied to or in the dark. We will see if he believes he has been any of those going forward. Manu?
Yeah, and Jeff, as you mentioned, the president and the White House are trying to make this about the Atlantic Reporter, but those text messages have been released. It is their own words of the officials themselves, and Hegseth themselves trying to carry out this mission. Have we got any sense from whether Trump is still have full confidence behind Hegseth?
That is a central question here because they put so much political capital on the line to get him confirmed, as you well remember. So as of now, the White House and the president have not said anything negatively against him. But notably, the president is also, when he had the opportunity yesterday to have Mike Walls just a few feet away from him at the same table, he said he was supporting him. Secretary Hegseth, of course, is traveling. He's still in Hawaii, heading to Asia. But the president has not offered any criticism, but notably has also not offered his full-throat support. So there's no doubt, the bottom line, when the defense secretary comes back from this Asia trip, he'll be answering some questions on Capitol Hill and likely from the White House as well.
Yeah,
Manu?
we know that Trump, if he wanted to, he could post something right now on Truth Social and offer his full-throated defense of Pete Hegseth. We'll see if he ultimately does that. Jeff Zeleny, live from the White House. Thank you so much. And I want to bring in retired Army General Mark Kimmitt, Brigadier General Mark Kimmitt, to discuss all this. General Kimmitt, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. As you heard from that testimony, Gabbard and Ratcliffe, they repeated that there was no classified information in that chat. I want you to listen to what they said in this sworn testimony.
Now, it was It wasn't classified, as I understand it. There was no classified information. There was no problem, and the attack was a tremendous success.
There was no classified material that was shared in that
So then if
signal
there was no
chat. I'll reiterate that there was no classified material that was shared in that
And if there's
signal.
no classified,
My communications, to be clear, in a signal message group were entirely permissible and lawful and did not include classified information.
So, General, when you see those texts and you see Hegseth talking about the timing of these strikes and the like, is there any doubt in your mind that the information would be classified?
Well, the two different questions here. Was the information classified? The Secretary of Defense is the classification authority. So if he says it's not classified, then it's not classified. That's not the relevant question. The relevant question is, should it have been classified? Look, the United States military is always careful to protect tactics, techniques, and procedures because we feel that if the adversary, if the enemy knows our TTPs, that gives them a decided advantage. As I look at what was put out there, there were simply and clearly tactics, techniques, and procedures that if they weren't classified, a responsible classification authority would say, let's classify this information.
And the White House is trying to make a distinction between, quote, war plans and, quote, attack plans as they try to discredit the Atlantic. And so just here are some of the posts from the White House press secretary and deputy chief of staff who posted the Atlantic was already abandoned their, quote, war plans narrative, underlining the words attack plans in the Atlantic headline. So what is the distinction between war plans and attack plans, or is there really just not a distinction without a difference?
Oh, there's a distinction with a difference. I was a war planner in Germany and at US CENTCOM. War plans are preparatory plans that come in excruciating detail that are ready to conduct an operation in the future. They are plans, they're not operations. But when you take that plan and you say, let's execute it, then it becomes an op-ord, it becomes an operation. Candidly, it is the case that war plans are probably less sensitive because they are speculative in nature. Operations plans, which we saw released as part of these texts, clearly are less speculative, more active, and put more soldiers and sailors and airmen at risk.
And the ranking Democrat on the committee, Jim Himes, said, quote, I think it's by the awesome grace of God that we are not mourning dead pilots right now. Do you agree with that assessment?
No, I don't agree with that assessment. I think that's a little bit inflammatory. The fact remains that Signal is a very secure app. It was very unlikely that information would have got out. But it does go to the central point, which is it's a good thing that the information didn't get out. And let's learn from that and just not do it again.
What kind of accountability do you think that should happen here, given that we saw what's happened in this chat, and people are calling for Secretary Hegseth or the National Security Advisor, Michael Waltz, to resign? What do you make of those calls? Do you agree with that, or what do you think should happen?
Look, I think that this no faults, no error cancel culture that we live in would cause somebody to say, let's get rid of these guys right away. I don't believe that. I came up in an army that was somewhat forgiving of mistakes that were made unintentionally and did not create any harm. There may be some political rush to try to send these people down the river, but I would have a much higher standard before I would consider relieving any commanders or any staff officers for what I saw here.
Do you think the Secretary of Defense should at least own up to a mistake here? He's been sort of defiant so far. Should he own up to it?
Well, come on. We all know the old axiom, the cover-up is worse than the crime. And the fact is the crime was significant, but not deadly. But the cover-up or the pushing back on this, I think, is probably something that doesn't show a lot of maturity. And people ought to think very hard about it. Just admit the screw-up, fix it, don't do it again. Don't try to turn this in on either side of the aisle. Don't try to turn this into a political maelstrom.
All right, Brigadier General Mark Kimmitt, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. Really appreciate your expertise.